All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian with you guys. It's going to be a hot one tonight. Okay, I'm on fire. So two particular stories. The first one we're going to do about Fox News and debates, and then Ilhan Omar. That Ilhan Omar story continues to rage. They just passed a resolution. It is preposterous. I'll tell you the real resolution they should have passed. I'll tell you who should be kicked out of the Foreign Affairs Committee. It's another Democrat who did actually ask Ilhan Omar, in essence, for a loyalty pledge to Israel. So, okay, that happened and nobody gives a damn. So she was totally right. So that's later in the program, and like I said, fire and fury.
Yeah.
Okay, now we got a whole big show for you guys. Lots of folks to hit, ranging from Republicans to Democrats. That's what we do on the Young Turks. So, by the way, last hour of the Young Turks, someone who was in the room with Ilhan Omar when she made the comments, who's Jewish, and said she didn't say any of the things that they're. She never attacked Jews at all. I was right there. I was sitting next to her. So anyway, all that's coming up on today's show. Anna, what's up first?
Earlier this week, The New Yorker reported that a Fox News reporter by the name of Diana Falzone was unable to publish a breaking news story regarding Stormy Daniels. So now the conversation regarding Fox News has shifted from everyone acknowledging that it is a propaganda news network to defending Fox News after the DNC has decided that they will not allow Fox to host one of the primary debates for the Democratic Party. So Tom Perez, who is the DNC chair, explained why, and I think his explanation makes a lot of sense. Take a look.
So I have great respect for Chris Wallace, and my concern is not about Chris Wallace, it's about people above Chris Wallace. Because what we have seen now, and it's been really most recently now in the New Yorker story, is that at the highest levels of Fox News, they're not playing it straight. And again, this isn't about Chris Wallace. I have respect for him, but I do not have the confidence that we need to take such an important part of the nomination process, these debates, and trust them to folks who at the top levels are consulting Donald Trump before they do anything.
So his argument makes a lot of sense. Cenk, jump in.
Yeah, so two things about this that you need to know. One is why Fox News was set up in the first place. It was set up to destroy the Democratic Party. I have quotes that I will share with you guys that go a long way towards proving that. So why are we even having this debate? Does anyone in the country believe that Fox News is unbiased? Anyone? I mean, like literally, conservatives. You don't think they're neutral, do you? No, nobody thinks that. So why are we having the debate? So that leads to the second part. The second part is about the elites. And the elites have friends who work at Fox News. So that is why they have this, wait a minute, hey, I got good friends making millions of dollars at Fox News. What do you mean they're not a legitimate news organization? Maybe I could make a lot of money at Fox News one day.
Totally.
And that's why we're having the debate. Of course, why would you have a Democratic primary debate on Fox News? Hey, but we can do equal and opposite if you like. If the Republicans agree to hold a primary debate on the Young Turks, then great. Well, okay, then that makes sense. Okay, we don't agree with them. Fox News doesn't agree with the Democrats. Okay, and that would be super interesting. But let's be honest about what's going on here. Pretending that Fox News is neutral? Which insane person would do that? Which leads us to Democrats that are doing that.
Well, in a move that honestly I would expect from someone who worked for the Obama administration. His deputy chief of staff, Alyssa Mastromonaco, I don't even know who cares about her last name. You're about to hear from her. She's about to make the case that, hey, I don't understand why the DNC would do this. Why the hell would they ban Fox News from the Democratic primary debates? Take a look.
What do you make of the DNC's decision on the debates and Fox News?
I was disappointed.
Yeah.
I don't understand the strategy behind thinking that we're going to expand our base into the Fox News audience when we really need to unite our own party. And so now it's just this unnecessary controversy. President Trump's tweeting about it.
Oh,
Wait.
President Trump's tweeting about it. It's an unnecessary controversy.
Wow.
Mastromonaco is her last name. I apologize. I'm fired up about this story because of how utterly ridiculous it is, especially considering the fact that this is not a game. We're dealing with the upcoming election where it is of the utmost importance to ensure that everybody plays fair and that we elect the right person. But they're so concerned with their ridiculous establishment like buddies that even when it comes to Fox News, which has not played fair, which has made up stories or pushed made up stories. Oh no, we gotta defend Fox News. They have some real journalists there. First of all, if you do believe that argument, how are you gonna say that they have real journalists there when they're not able to do their jobs? When the executives at Fox News, based on the New Yorker report this week, not 2 years ago, this week, the executives at Fox News shut a journalist down and said, you know what, we're looking out for Trump, so sorry, kiddo, you can't publish this. Come on.
Okay, so, and I like their feigned outrage, like, oh my God, did Fox News do that? There's been years of memos leaked from Fox News saying, hey, when the Democrats win, pretend that Hamas was excited about it. And then you see Martha McCullum, one of the news people on Fox News saying, oh, here's footage that's not true, right away using other footage showing, oh, look at these terrorists excited about the Democratic wins. That happened years and years ago. We know all this. Brave New Films did a documentary about this over a decade ago, okay? So it's called Out Fox, you should check it out. And so now 2 other things. One is, to be fair though, how many primary debates did the Republicans have? They had a ton of primary debates. They had 12 primary debates in the 2016 election cycle. How many on MSNBC? Forget the Young Turks. How many on MSNBC? 0. So wait a minute, why do the Democrats have to have one on Fox News? MSNBC is barely, like, I guess they're pro-Democrat, they're definitely not progressive. So like they could put on like an all-star Republican panel on MSNBC with Joe Scarborough and like 3 other deeply Republican hosts that they have, and they won't even go on MSNBC. They're like, oh, well, we went on CNBC. CNBC is arguably more conservative than Fox News. So this is preposterous.
So let's hear a little bit more from Mastromonaco. Again, she was the deputy chief of staff under the Obama administration.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say that. Yeah, explain why that would be good for Democrats to reach out to people who aren't automatically Democratic voters.
I mean, it would be good. I mean, Chris Wallace was my first ever national television interview, and he was very respectful and wonderful. He's great. I guess I just think that, of all the things to sort of come out of the gate with, is that the one?
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one that they came out of the gate with. And what are you gonna do about it?
And
Who
besides
cares?
which, it's that none of this is true. What do you mean came out of the gate with? Like there's a sense of entitlement that Fox News should set up an ambush for the Democrats where they frame every issue from a conservative perspective. And if you don't fall into that ambush, they're like, but you're offending my friends who I see in the cocktail circuit all the time. They're really pleasant to me. I mean, they'd help destroy the Democratic Party, but they're super pleasant to me.
Here's what
and Joe Scarborough, the Republican on MSNBC, is like, bravo, that's right. The Democrats should go fall into that trap right away. And they should get asked absurd questions about Benghazi 28 years later.
So
right?
let me just jump in, because I think that you make a valid point in that when it comes to mainstream media and when it comes to establishment politicians, there is not only a cozy relationship, oftentimes when it comes to covering incredibly important news stories, they come at it from a very corporatist angle, and oftentimes, and the questions that you get, if you can recall how the debates went in 2016, regardless of which network it was on, they didn't focus on the issues that matter to most Americans, right? So for instance, millennials care a lot about things like student loan debt, which they did cover, but climate change. Climate change was just, hey, maybe we'll throw in a question here or there. But they didn't really focus on it because why? Well, their corporate sponsors don't want to hear a debate about climate change. But I want to go to the next video, and before we toss to it, let me just say, my argument is that this scares cable news networks because they're worried about losing power, and nothing makes that more obvious to me than the panic that you see in Anderson Cooper's eyes in this next clip.
Does it make sense to you that the DNC would do this? I mean, an audience is an audience, and there are, plenty of people who watch Fox News, and there are responsible journalists who could ask questions. I mean, Chris Wallace is a tough interviewer, Brett Baier.
It has moved into a space where it is so closely aligned with President Trump that it really borders on, on sort of propaganda sometimes. That said, there are good journalists there, and I think that they could negotiate to have a debate with a Chris Wallace, for example, a Martha McCallum, a Brett Baier, and I think they would be smart to do it.
Senator Trump, I mean, it sounds like the kind of thing that pleases, the liberal part or the left, far left part of the Democratic Party and sort of makes them feel good. But just in terms of, trying to sway voters who could be reached, it seems short-sighted, no?
Yeah, what are they afraid of?
What are they afraid of? They're not afraid of anything other other than Fox News framing things in a way that only attempts to smear certain candidates. Look, Tom Perez, let me go to Trump's tweet first.
Before you go I just gotta say, under Rick Santorum's logic, why aren't the Republicans on Young Turks every day? What are they afraid of? Are they cowards? Why won't they come on the Young Turks? They never ever come on the Young Turks. And we've got an audience of 250 million people per month, okay? Why don't you come on the Young Turks? Cowards. Two can play at that game, right? No, but cable news only does it in regards to Fox News. Why? They're protecting their own ass, which leads us to Trump's tweet.
So everyone's panicking about Trump's tweet, which goes back to my point about how these cable news networks, and not just cable news networks, print journalists are rushing to Fox News's defense because they're worried about losing their access to these candidates. So Donald Trump tweeted the following, graphic 8. Democrats just blocked Fox News from holding a debate. Good. Then I think I'll do the same thing with the fake news networks and the radical left Democrats in the general election debates.
And that's why you see the smell of panic in the morning from Anderson Cooper and Joe Scarborough. Like, wait, we have to defend our buddies at Fox News. I know a lot of them, I might work there, and they can't take away our access. This is about us. So, do you care about the Democratic Party? No. What you care about is your own ass. So let's be absolutely clear about that. And this whole talk of, because of Trump, they're now doing propaganda. Come on, this is total horse crap. They've been doing propaganda from day one, so let me prove that for you guys. First of all, we just glide over the fact that Fox News handed the 2000 election to George W. Bush. When it was obviously, statistically too close to call, Fox News was the first so-called news organization. They came out and called it for George W. Bush when they had no basis in fact to do that, okay? Do you wanna know who was heading up their election counting at Fox News? George W. Bush's cousin. And then the rest of the news organizations panicked. Fox News called it for Bush. Oh my God, we gotta call it. And it turns out after the election, not only did Gore win the popular vote, when all the news organizations counted, turns out Gore had won Florida and the Electoral College. Fox News already robbed the Democrats and the entire country of a legitimate president. That happened in the year 2000. 19 years later, we're still debating whether Fox News has Democrats' best interests in mind.
No, Cenk, but no, Chris Wallace. That's it. All I have to say is Chris Wallace.
Because he's a good journalist. He did
a few fair interviews related to the Trump administration, and so Chris Wallace. That's it. End of story. Chris Wallace exists.
And Brett Baier, we have cocktails with him all the time. Man, those little pigs in a blanket we eat together, and the bacon wrapped seafood. Oh God, but I love Brett Baier and Chris Wallace. They're my friends. They make millions of dollars just like me. Okay, these are the elites that betray the Democratic Party. Now, let me tell you, beyond 2000, why did Roger Ailes help found Fox News in the first place? You want to see a memo from when he was with the Nixon administration. So Roger Ailes worked with Richard Nixon. He didn't have to teach Richard Nixon dirty tricks, but he taught him the power of television, which was so important. And Nixon didn't even quite believe it. He's like, isn't television a gimmick? Ailes is like, no, it's not a gimmick. We need TV. We need to usurp that power, okay? So he wrote a memo back then saying, quote, a plan for putting the GOP on TV news. So now this is decades before Fox News. A plan for putting the GOP on TV news. And he explained in the memo, today, television news is watched more often than people read newspapers, than people listen to the radio, than people read or gather any other form of communication. The reason, people are lazy. With television, you just sit, watch, listen. The thinking is done for you. So this is Roger Ailes, who started Fox News, explaining to the Republicans, take over TV and you'll be able to manipulate the American people who are lazy and stupid.
But Chris Wallace.
We should give these guys a Democratic debate. I'm not done. He said, this is a plan that places news of importance to localities. Senators and representatives are newsmakers of importance to their localities on local television news programs while it is still news. It avoids the censorship, the priorities, and the prejudices of network news selectors and disseminators. So back then, there's no cable news. He comes up with a plan to get news directly to the local news guys, so you don't have to deal with the pain in the ass print journalists who actually do their job. So this way, you can get your unfiltered propaganda straight into people's living rooms. So he hatches that plan. Later, when Rupert Murdoch comes along with a bag of cash and says, hey, you know what? I'm gonna start up this thing called Fox News Channel. You wanna do it with me? And Roger Ailes comes in and goes, perfect vehicle. That's exactly what I wanted. Now we'll zoom them right into their living rooms and we got them. The Fox News was set up to destroy the Democratic Party. What kind of a fool says, oh yeah, that's a great idea, I'll walk right into that trap. And then you have all these elites on television going, well, it would be really offensive to Republicans if you didn't walk into their trap. And and you don't want to create a distraction. And if the Republicans yell at you and Trump yells at you, that's a distraction. So you have to back down. No, what you have to do is fight them. I don't know if you know this because they know it. They're in the opposition party. You're supposed to fight them, not kowtow to them and bow down to them. And so one of the things that he wrote in the sidelines of this, by the way, is as he explained the whole thing, he said, we'll get some flap about news management. Okay, you know what that means? That means we're gonna manage the news. Okay, we're gonna massage the news and we're gonna feed it straight into the American people's minds. And we'll get some flap for it because we're circumventing real news.
Right. And I want to add one other thing to this story that I think is important. Look, the heart of the story, the facts of what actually happened in any given political story, whether it be policy, whether it be a political controversy, is something that you cannot change. Everyone in the news, regardless of whether they're willing to admit it or not, has a political perspective, has a political bias, has political values and views. And we're honest about those political values and views, but you cannot make up the details or the facts of the story. The facts are the facts, period, right? But I wanna just, because you keep mentioning us in relation to Fox, and it's making me cringe. Because here's what we don't do. We don't make up stories about Acorn. Do you remember that?
No, of course.
Okay. We don't make up stories about Planned Parenthood selling aborted baby parts. But Fox News did. Fox News, over and over again, runs with complete fabricated stories. They go with it because it smears one specific party, and that party happens to be the Democratic Party. So for once in their lives, the DNC and the Democratic Party finally realized, hey, maybe we should be smart about this. Maybe there's a lot on the line. Maybe we should fight back and be strong. And I don't think the country's used to that. So they're piling on and attacking. But guess what? For once, the DNC is doing the right thing. And I hope that they stand their ground on this issue because Fox News has absolutely no interest. And I think it's been abundantly clear based on their actions. They have no interest in being fair in these debates. I don't care how good Chris Wallace is at interviewing. I don't care how fair he's been. If you look at the details of what Fox has done over the decades, they have not had any interest in playing a vital, critical, and fair role in our political system whatsoever. It is not journalism, and if there are journalists there, as we can tell from that New Yorker reporting, they get shut down immediately if the reporting doesn't go along with their agenda, period.
So you wanna know the difference between perspective journalism and propaganda? Whether you lie or you don't. So if you're honest about your perspective, there's nothing wrong with that at all. But if you hide your perspective, which they did for decades, fair and balanced, come on. The whole thing's a total joke, right? And then way worse, is them actually lying about the stories, putting up doctored videos. They've done it countless times. I mean, look at how they are defended. They say, well, there's potentially 2 journalists on there. Perhaps the exception might prove the rule, okay? And finally, if all this was not enough for you guys, Roger Ailes gave questions ahead of time during the Republican primaries to Donald Trump.
No, but Jake, they're gonna be fair because Chris Wallace. Come on.
This
Stop
is a joke.
insulting our intelligence. That's the thing that's frustrating. And all the mainstream media outlets that are going to rushing to Fox's defense with this nonsense argument, please, we're not idiots. Everyone's noticed and paid attention to what's been going on in the country, especially when it comes to these news outlets. Stop insulting our intelligence.
And when the rest of the mainstream media, and especially cable news guys, go and defend Fox News like this is how you lose the trust of your audience. Because you're looking out for your own interests and not for the interest of the American people. And in this case, the American people are not necessarily on the Democratic side. What I mean by that is, are you delivering them the truth, or are you delivering them the news based on what is best for you rather than them? And right now with Anderson Cooper and Joe Scarborough and all those guys defending their buddies at Fox News and their own access, they're not giving you the real news. They're giving you news super biased towards themselves.
We got to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to show you how the federal government has been tracking and punishing journalists who happen to cover the migrant crisis fairly.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks. First of all, I want to let you know we're covering a lot of the rallies that are happening in the Democratic primaries. The biggest ones so far have been Bernie's. John Hickensnoozer is right behind him, though, with 4 or 5 people showing up to his rallies. Anyway, so Bernie Sanders is having another rally in Iowa tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. And we're going to cover that for you guys at facebook.com/rebelhq, so you can check out all the rallies and. The major cable news, of course, will not be covering Bernie's empty podium or full podium, but we will. So check that out when you get a chance. Now, we've got some folks that are varying ranges of disagreeing with us, so I want to share that with you guys. Some dude, literally, okay, that's his handle, on our member section, writes in, so the TYT position is the progressive message should not reach the Fox viewers unfiltered. Bernie should be denied an opportunity to address conservatives inside their bubble. I disagree. Okay, I hear you, brother. So I'm not saying Bernie should not go and do interviews there, but understand that they're going to try to frame Bernie, and they're going to try to frame him the worst possible way. They're going to say, well, since you're a communist like Fidel Castro and Nicolas Maduro, how do you plan on destroying the American government? That's going to be they're not going to be that unsubtle, but that is going to be the essence of their framing, okay? And they keep thinking that the Fox News audience is persuadable. I'm not convinced that that's true at all.
Yeah, look,
there's not like a huge swath of independents in the Fox News audience.
So look, that part I don't know, because while I agree that the majority of their audience is right wing and they've been drinking that Kool-Aid for a while and it's hard to convince them otherwise, I don't know how many people are independents who, aren't as engaged in politics and still think that Fox News might be fair. The issue here is, will the debates be covered fairly? Will they go down fairly? And given the fact that in the past, just in the past general election, they gave the questions to Trump ahead of time. Just given that fact alone, do you really trust them to do their jobs fairly? Come on.
And now Steve N makes a good point. I know what a lot of you are thinking, and he says, Fox News is definitely biased, but let's not pretend that CNN and MSNBC aren't biased too.
They are.
And in some ways, those debates will be skewed even more against Bernie Sanders. Not against the Democratic ideas as much, but man, they love the establishment Democrats, and man, they can't stand Bernie Sanders. And did CNN do the same thing that Fox did? Yeah, they gave questions to Hillary Clinton ahead of time. Donna Brazile did. And so we uncovered that, and we were right about that. And so they've got their own set of issues. I'm just saying, we don't need to walk into an ambush not realizing it's an ambush. And if you watch cable news right now, everybody's like, what do you mean ambush? What do you mean? Fox is gonna ask them questions straight up. straight up.
So that last tweet, I definitely agree with, and there needs to be some thinking outside of the box to find solutions to this. And I think the thinking outside of the box is what scares cable news the most, because I would argue that none of these outlets are really that credible, right?
And if you're gonna give one that is so pro-establishment like CNN, you should at a bare minimum do one that is progressive, like the Young Turks. Now, why does the DNC give all the debates to major cable news? Well, one of the reasons is audience. I understand that. On the other hand, if there was a presidential debate online, first of all, almost anywhere, let alone the Young Turks, it would be gigantic. Now, part of the reason is they're framing it. The second reason is, well, we know all those guys are establishment, so that is a way of skewing the debates against the progressives and in favor of the establishment. So if the DNC actually wants to be fair to all the candidates, the next step they should do is have a debate on Young Turks or Democracy Now, an organization you could trust to be progressive. The Intercept, maybe we do one that's combined. Will they do that? Never. They'd rather have one on Fox News than have it on a progressive outlet. Look, maybe we can change their minds between now and when they have their debates, but that's the real question. Okay, now last thing here is another Merkus writes in, I think the DNC is banning debates on Fox to keep Republicans from supporting Bernie. Look, I don't know if they're that clever at the DNC.
Doubt it, yeah.
Okay, I think that they're just responding to pressure from the base who goes, are you nuts?
Right.
Why would we even consider this? So look, if you want to put pressure on the DNC to actually have a debate on a progressive outlet, that makes all the sense in the world. And if they think that the MSNBC is a real progressive outlet, that's kind of hilarious. Will Joe Scarborough be part of the panel? Oh, but he doesn't like Trump. Will Nicole Wallace be part of the panel? Is Hugh Hewitt still on there? Will he be part of the panel? This is not a progressive organization. In fact, if you asked MSNBC, are you guys progressives? They would say no. So you should actually have, isn't that amazing that the Democrats will hold a debate, will not hold a single debate on a news organization that has a progressive perspective? That's weird. Whereas the Republicans, half their debates are on Fox News.
And look, maybe if you insist on continuing the debates on these outlets, on these cable news shows, or outlets, I should say, maybe you have some sort of independent review involved, right? Maybe an individual who has expertise in journalistic ethics is involved in the process to ensure that it's genuinely fair and the framing isn't set in a way that favors one candidate over the other. I'm just saying, right now, there's no accountability. I mean, they get to do whatever they want. They get to frame it however they want. They get to feed questions to candidates that they like, right? And that happened on the Democratic side as well with Donna Brazile and Hillary Clinton. So look, those are issues and they matter. And it's amazing to me that we're about to repeat the exact same mistakes again.
Last one from Twitter, T. Joyce 1971 writes in, why would the Dems even consider a debate on a platform that gets its marching orders from Trump? I mean, it's such a simple question. Doesn't that make all the sense in the world? All right, look guys, though, I appreciate everyone who emails in or sends in comments during the show because we do this show together, whether you agree or disagree. Hashtag TYT Live on Twitter when we're live 6 to 8 or now 6 to 9 p.m. Eastern. And if you're a member, we do prefer your comments. We read your comments first, tyt.com/join to become a member. But this is not just us. This is not one-way communication and we're just talking to you from the mountaintop. We're interacting and we're incredibly responsive to our members. So thank you for sharing those comments. And let's keep doing the Young Turks together.
Yep.
All right, what's next?
A local NBC affiliate out of San Diego has done some incredible investigative reporting, and the reporters here found that the Trump administration has been keeping track of certain individuals who have either been covering or have been doing activist work pertaining to the migrant caravans at the border. Now, what they found was a source, essentially, who works with Border Patrol, and this individual was willing to leak documents that proved that certain people were being flagged. So the individuals listed include 10 journalists, 7 of whom are US citizens, a US attorney, and 48 people from the US and other countries labeled as organizers, instigators, or their roles unknown. The target list includes advocates from organizations like Border Angels and Pueblo Sin Fronteras. So this is what the federal government is doing right now. They are placing alerts on the passports for some of these people. And so far, we know that at least 2 photojournalists and an attorney was barred from entering Mexico in order to do this work, okay? This is as Orwellian as you can get, okay? Because people were being taken aside and essentially interrogated to make sure that the officials involved knew what they were filming, what they were taking photos of. Remember, these stories and these images that we've been seeing that feature children in cages at the border, not a good look for the Trump administration. So it appears that they were trying to control that. One photojournalist said that she was pulled into secondary inspections 3 times and asked questions about who she saw and photographed in Tijuana shelters. Another photojournalist said she spent 13 hours detained by Mexican authorities when she tried to cross the border into Mexico City. Eventually, she was denied entry into Mexico and sent back to the US.
So if you're wondering why the Mexican authorities, because this is a organization that does cooperation with the Mexican authorities on who's coming across the border. So not only do all the US authorities have it, ICE, and all the way through to the FBI, but the Mexican authorities have these in name of suspects. And they're only suspects because they're journalists or they're lawyers or they're immigrant advocates. And now normally that would be unconscionable, but there's 2 phenomenon here that is making this not a giant story. One is there isn't any cable news guys on here or mainstream media people, okay?
That's right.
If they had done this to a New York Times reporter or a CNN reporter or
Jim
God
Acosta
forbid,
was involved somehow?
Yeah, oh my God, this story would be explosive. If Jim Acosta or Brett Pear, a Fox News anchor, was on a list of people who needed to, that the FBI had, and they collected personal information about them, well, then it'd be a giant scandal. But these are local journalists who are working hard and lawyers, etc. Who cares? And by the way, great credit to NBC7 who uncovered the story in the first place. So credit where credit is due. Okay.
Yes.
And then the second reason is Trump floods the zone. So this is one of 1,000 horrible things he's done. If Obama had a list of journalists and activists that could you imagine if Obama had a list of right-wing activists that he sent to all the different government organizations? Hey, make sure you take pictures of their passports. You know where they live. Are you kidding me? Heads would have exploded. It would have been the biggest scandal in the Obama administration. So let me give you details on how much they're being, how invasive they're being. In the woman who was detained for 13 hours, they asked her, are you going to cover the caravan? First of all, that's none of your business. She's a reporter, she can cover whatever she likes. Then they add, but it gets way worse. They wanted to know how I was funding my work. What do you, okay, how is Fox News funding their work? Well, what kind of questions are these? Then they asked one of the women, do you own or rent your home? What are we doing here? This is Gestapo-like tactics. Why would the Border Patrol care if a journalist owns or rents their home? How could that possibly be pertinent to what you're doing? So they collect dossiers on people.
Yep.
So let's, Nicole Ramos. She's the refugee director and attorney for Al Otro Lado. That's a law center for migrants and refugees, okay? Her dossier included personal details on her, including the car she drives, her mother's name, and her work and travel history.
I mean, it's terrifying, right? And to Cenk's point, most of these journalists and photojournalists appear to be independent journalists. Some of them are activists, some of them are lawyers who are looking to help protect the asylum seekers, because we have laws that are not being followed by the Trump administration. And so the main source for this story, by the way, I want to be absolutely clear about where he or she works specifically. So this source is anonymous for obvious reasons, it's a whistleblower, and he or she is from the Department of Homeland Security. And this person provided documents as evidence of what's going on. And so we'll include a link to this story in the description box because you should read the entire story for yourselves, but more importantly, you should look at the documents that have been provided.
Yes, and in a separate story, Committee to Protect Journalists say that 37 different journalists have had secondary screenings that were invasive, and 20 involved border agents, quote, conducting warrantless searches of the journalists' electronic devices. Well, that's illegal and unconstitutional, but I don't want us to get used to illegality. I don't want us to get used to journalists being targeted by our government. And remember, there's 3 different categories here: journalists, lawyers, and activists and advocates. And all 3 are being targeted. And none of this is constitutional, and it happens every day.
And I want to give you a statement from the anonymous source here. Again, this individual is from the Department of Homeland Security. The quote is, "We are a criminal investigation agency. We're not an intelligence agency. We can't create dossiers on people, and they're creating dossiers. This is an abuse of the Border Search Authority." So abuse of power has been running rampant in the Trump administration. It is devastating that a story like this that really does violate our rights is just kind of being brushed under the rug. No one's really paying attention to it. But this is what's going on at the border. And when Customs and Border Patrol was contacted in order to, get a statement from them, see if they're willing to admit to what's going on, the only statement that they gave was, Customs and Border Patrol said journalists are being tracked so that the agency can learn more about what started that violence. And they're referring to the alleged violence that occurred when the Trump administration decided to shut down the border in San Diego, right? And so I find that to be a ridiculous excuse. I mean, are they trying to say, no, we're just trying to follow their reporting so we can figure out, who started the violence here?
Yeah, then why don't you read their articles? That would be one way to do it. You're not allowed to have their notes. That's not how our system works, or that's not how it used to work. And finally, let me give you an example of Kitra Kahana. She's one of the reporters that was detained. So she came from Canada to a connecting flight to Detroit to go to Mexico. And why does Border Patrol in Mexico need information about whether she rents or owns her home nowhere near the Mexican border? How could that possibly be relevant? But what's even worse is she lands in Mexico, they detain her for 13 hours, and then they deny her entrance. So she's not allowed to do the reporting because the Trump administration has her on what is, in essence, an enemies list. These people are not allowed to cover this story. And yet we march on. So when people say they're concerned about the rise of an unconstitutional government, a fascist government, a government that does not abide by our system of government, this is the things that they are talking about. And every time on Fox News and other places, they'll feign outrage. What do you mean? What has Trump ever done? This is one of 1,000 things he's done, but this alone is deeply troubling.
We have to take a break, but when we come back, we have Kirstjen Nielsen, the head of Homeland Security. She had to testify in front of the House Homeland Security Committee, and it's amazing.
Yeah, and I want to tell you 2 other stories that are coming up that I don't want you to miss. Now Kushner's having secret meetings with the Saudis and not allowing any other American officials. This is just madness on top of madness. And then Ilhan Omar's story, because we're not talking about the real anti-Semitism. We're not talking about the real people who should be kicked off the Foreign Affairs Committee. We're going to change that conversation, so don't miss it. Share this stream, make sure you got everybody watching, because cable news, as usual, they're not telling you the real story. You want to talk about anti-Semitism, we're going to talk about it later on this program and show you where it really lies. We'll be right back.